Hey, Ashlan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay, this has been a long time coming. I mean, the backstory is I've worked with you for, God, is it like 7 years now?
Is it 7?
6 or 7 years. But I've been trying to get you on this podcast for, it's coming up on a year, July 7th. I've been trying to get you on this podcast for a fucking year. And you're finally here.
I'm here. Welcome.
And I'm so excited because, you have been manifesting and doing a lot of things that I've been super excited and been honored enough to be involved in, but I'm more excited to tell people about it because, one, you're amazing. And I love your vision. And I think it's so important for people to see it and understand it because it's pretty big.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. You are a little bit about Michelle and my, collaboration is I always look at you as kind of the co-pilot in all these different endeavors, because without the visual aspect of it doesn't truly come together. So I have been absolutely blessed to have you on board to manifest these visions. And it's almost like, when you get these ideas, as I do often, and because you've heard them over the years, like I have to do this. I'm going to do this, and then bringing it into this reality is I don't know. It's been really exciting to be able to bring it into the reality and share it with others in a way that's actually true and meaningful and authentic.
I thank you. It's been so much fun. So a little like the background of, we started together at Serendipity. I'll let you tell the story, but we started together there, and then you opened a second location on the same street on Tahunga, Muse House. And then now you've just started and created a retreat house, which we'll go into a little bit later. Tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how your journey started.
Yes, so my journey started with a store called Trinkets and Treasures. And I believe when you started with me, it may have been the tail end of that. It's almost like I was just going into becoming Serendipity.
I think you had already had it. I think it was
Serendipity.
You had already purchased it.
Yes, I purchased it as Trinkets and Treasures, and that stayed Trinkets and Treasures until about 2015. So 2015, I changed the name. I started turning it into an LLC. I just started to evolve that store because it was an older gift shop, and I really wanted to bring in more life to it, I guess. And then curating the backspace, which is called the Tree House, which is the kids section, was such a huge passion of mine, and it actually still is. And so that's kind of how that store became mine. Is I bought it in 2012, but I kind of had a footprint even before that in the store back in, I want to say like 2008. And that was,
you were doing the kids. You had taken over the back section, which is the kids section. You'd taken over that, so it's kind of like an owner within an owner's store.
Right. It was kind of like having a foot in the door of, okay, I really would love to have a kid shop, and that was my passion at the time. And I had a young son, and it kind of all came into play as, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm stepping into. And when Suzanne was ready to sell, I was ready to buy. So I bought the entire space, or bought the entire business, and took over the entire space. And then really got thrown into gift and buying for gifts, and how to evolve kind of from just like I don't want to call it an older woman gift shop, but the clientele was probably 60 to 80, maybe pushing on up there, and that was our main clientele. So I was I was 20, no, I was 30 at the time. And so I was really feeling like, okay, I need to bridge this huge gap because people are coming in and buying for their grandparents or they're buying for their grandchildren when we're missing a whole market. And so it was kind of how am I bringing what I love and then allowing people to.
What did they sell before? Because, okay, so right now, Serendipity has tabletop and you have beautiful cookbooks and lifestyle books, and you've curated like this amazing Joshua Tree vibe thing, and you've got personal care, and you started there at the crystals and jewelry. What did she have before? Because the addition when I came along was the crystals and whatnot, but you already had kids and jewelry. What did Suzanne have there before that was mostly old lady stuff?
All the furniture that you love so much taken an absolute, some of it's still there, that there's a piece there that Michelle and I always laugh about because I think I'm just like, this piece, I can't. And I don't know what it is. It's almost like a staple. It's like it's there and we haven't been able to change it. And people ask sometimes, like, if it's for sale, I'm like, yes, it's for sale. You can buy it.
So everyone knows the furniture there. If you remember Shabby Chic and that whole phase of everyone buying vintage pieces that were pretty ornate, and then they painted them down white, and then they changed the knobs to crystal. That's pretty much was the majority of your fixtures.
Exactly. And that's what she did. That's how she made her living. I mean, honestly, she would just go to thrift stores and buy these pieces and refinish them and then sell them. And that was like, it was huge for her.
Yeah, because it was the time. I mean, that was the era. I mean, that style was huge.
Yes. So we had that, and then we had a lot of downtown LA goods. So Suzanne, I should say, when I bought the store, so it was old scarves, not old scarves, but scarves and random things. I mean, like very random. When I think back to the time of purchasing that store, and I had my first Christmas, and I remember buying with Suzanne. We went to the mart, and I was really trained in old school buying because everybody that was around me was in their 60s and 70s. So I had like this very old school way of looking at things where it was like those dolls. Oh gosh, who was it? The dolls that had the hand painted faces, but they were the elves.
Oh my God. Yes.
And they were like, but they were.
I never saw those.
Who the heck is that? Totally blanking on the name.
The felt ones?
They're not felt. They were like canvas. They were beautifully painted, but it was like they Halloween.
Like the witch one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Okay. So doing a whole window of like the elves and then the Santa Claus and the sleigh. And that was like our way of doing Christmas. And so that's how I was trained. And that's how I, saw things at like a really, really young age. And I didn't realize that was an older way of doing things until I started getting in there and realizing, well, do I want to put this Santa Claus in my house? Probably not. So probably it just started shifting.
Yeah, I love how seeing how it has evolved. I mean, I will tell you the story because I tell it often on the podcast, is that remember you called me and it was like, hey, I think Danielle, your rep for Stephen Young, suggested. So I met you, and our first trip together, our first interaction together, you had all the plastic risers and the little pieces of mirrors. And I was like, I'm getting rid of all these. And you were like, no. I like these. I use these, and we're getting rid of them. And I took them all away. And then I come back the next time and they'd all be back. And now I love it because now you won't even, like, those have all been thrown out. Like, you don't use, like, you're now like, what I preach always is like no plastic risers and books and pieces of wood and all these beautiful things that you can create risers about. So everyone who's listened to this has heard the story. So at least now they know.
Yeah, that's me. Well, because the way Suzanne taught it was you have to rise things up. So you have to have depth, right? Yeah. So creation of depth. And the way we did that was yeah, her risers everywhere. I probably had 500 risers.
But it is correct in the sense of display and merchandising theory. It is, in theory, it is correct. But now when you say you're trained by older women, now that totally makes sense, because it didn't even dawn on me until you just said that you've been trained by older women who have been in the game forever. And back in the day, those plastic, which is why it's so hard to break people's habits of using them, or seeing other ways to use them. Now that makes total sense. I just had a revelation. So you had serendipity, and then you decided you brought in crystals into the store, and you were starting to kind of move in that direction.
Yeah, I was starting to bring in, I don't know, my life, really, it kind of lines up with, the business is always kind of lined up with what's going on in my life. And at that time, I was having these moments of 2016, 2017 of like, I'm not, I don't even know if I felt like I wasn't in the right place. I felt like I needed to expand somehow. And so how am I doing that? Now, it wasn't even, it was expanding of my own being, or my own consciousness, or my own whatever. So it wasn't necessarily in the business, because I always found like crazy stability in that business. So it wasn't the business so much, but what the business reflects is what's going on within me. So when I started to understand that, and then I started to want to share all the tools that I was using just in my own personal life, whether it was, these amazing books that I had read from from my early 20s on, that had helped shift in my perspective in my life. And then also crystals just because I thought they were beautiful, and healers. So these were elements that I was like, okay, I'm starting to put them into serendipity. And it was really just not making sense. It just felt weird. It felt contradictory. And that's where I always kind of see these two sides of, like, we consider it the Maya world, right? Where it's materialistic, and it's the material world. And then you think of the spiritual world, and we think of them so separately, right? It's like this is here, and then this is here. And, that's where they're supposed to be. That's their place. And I was trying to mix them, right? Because they were really mixed in my own life, and they still are. But it almost was getting too, like, the spiritual stuff was all taking over. So it needed its own space. So yeah. I still like to think of it as mixed, because when I think of the stores, they are one and the same, if you will. Like, it's still the older sister who kind of gave birth to the other one. Without one, you wouldn't have the other. So it's kind of this really interesting yin and yang synchronicity between the two. And yeah, so Muse came out of this passion that I had for knowledge and the spiritual journey, and who am I connecting to? I had amazing healers around me, and amazing, my astrologer is incredible, and all those things were around me, but it's like I couldn't really connect them to the community, because a lot of people work from home. A lot of people are really hard to book. A lot of people, it's all word of mouth. And so I kind of wanted to start having more community things that would help other people who are kind of going through what I was going through. And so when Muse was born, it was 2019. Yeah, June 2019. And that was a really hard endeavor. I mean, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. It was hard.
Why was it hard? Because it didn't seem like it seemed like it was supernatural.
I know. I think I can project that pretty well. And it is supernatural, and it is me, but it was hard for me to get past the block of that big endeavor. It was like, oh my gosh.
The investment of opening.
Yes. Okay. On another space. This space wasn't set up the way Serendipity was set up. Serendipity was good to go. I mean, that was like the smartest investment anyone could make, was buying a business that was already making money and already had profit coming in. So like day one, I had money in the bank. Like there was no oh, I'm building this out and waiting for people to come. This was like, no, you're good to go. And so Muse was like, uh-oh.
Well, like to back up though, because you had a really clear view of what you wanted. I mean, you wanted a teepee, you knew you wanted this, the store has this beautiful wallpaper in the back of this, like, it's almost like Joshua Tree-esque with the cat, but you had a very, very clear view of what you wanted. So
yes, of how I wanted it to feel, the vision, right? And you and I kind of worked great on collaborating that because it was so, it's so you too, you know, like the raw wood, and we used, you know, recycled, reclaimed wood for all the shelving, and we really had this. I had it. The vision was there, the feeling was there. I knew what it felt like, and so that's like when it came together, it was right. Like I knew
the obstacle, the financial part, because I think a lot of owners, when they're biting off a second location, I think that they can probably understand what you felt like or the fears. Was it more financial or just structural?
It was because it was a different concept. You know, it wasn't like I was putting another serendipity in, you know, Malibu. This was, I was putting another store on the same street, with a totally different concept. And at that time, and we're talking 3 years ago, it's not even that long, people would come into the store and just be like, what is this? You know, just be like, really? Is this an Indian store? It was like so rude, you know.
Are you kidding me? Like I'm never there when the store is open, so I never get to see people's reaction. Yeah. Why was it okay, why were they asking us an Indian store?
Because of the teepee.
Oh God.
I mean, you have to understand, like, I know my audience, I know that community of Studio City, and I know they're awake people, but there's also like
not very woo-woo.
No, but there's a lot of people that really need help, you know, and need to like, and they're starting to open. And I had this sense that there was something coming, right? Sense in it. It was like, there's something coming. I was sensing it in 2018 and then 2019, and not that I was sensing necessarily the pandemic, but I was sensing there's a spiritual something coming that is like, that is, if you want to, you have to shift your business. Like, you can't be here. Like, this is not good. And then when you look at the astrology of it, and I wasn't super in tune with the world astrology or what was going on in the world astrologically. I knew my chart. Beyond that, wasn't paying attention. You know, we have the end of Pluto in Capricorn. So like, if you have the end of Pluto in Capricorn, we're talking about all businesses and all government shifting tremendously, right?
Oh yeah, and that was okay. Yeah, that was all during the last presidency, and
it's still happening, right? It's still happening. We just had it retrograde back to where it was, because we signed the Declaration of Independence at 27 degrees retrograde of Capricorn, Pluto, and it retrograded in the beginning of June, and then it just a week ago, a couple days ago actually, hit 27 degrees retrograde. And then
after Roe versus Wade was overturned,
we knew this was, yes, it's a huge revision. So thinking about all of that, right, and how this is a revision, because we can look at it as death and rebirth as well, right? It's a huge death. And then what's the change going to be, right? This is about the revision of how we're going to do things as a country in a way that is more aligned with who we are as people, right? So the United States is being asked to revise what they want to do as a country moving forward.
And it was the same retrograde.
So it's been in Capricorn for a long time, right? Oh yeah. So it's the same retrograde as when the Declaration of Independence was signed, because it was signed at 27 degrees, but it was retrograde at 27. So we knew at the end of June this was happening. We knew not this specific thing, but we knew something was coming, as well as into the future. And so how are we kind of rising together and becoming a different country, a different communities, different nation, all those things, because it really does open up. And if we're talking about what happened with the Supreme Court, it opens it up for that to become an amendment in the Constitution, because it was never actually an amendment. That was a something that the courts had decided. It wasn't an actual freedom like gun rights or anything else like that. So it opens it up to become that. And so it's actually, if we look at it from that perspective, it can be pretty powerful. And that's a side note, but it also, big side note. But I mean, I think that there's this positivity that comes with all of, this time frame, and how are we shifting not only things in our country and our lives, but our businesses, right? So we're shifting things in the businesses so we can evolve and move forward. And Muse was that. Muse was that, whether I saw it as that or not. I saw it as, okay, I'm doing this, and at the time that's, I'm doing this, I'm opening up another store, and this is because we needed more space for these things. But it also was me to see now, it was a shift in my business.
Yeah.
A shift in how I was driving it.
How long was it until, because, okay, going back to, is this an Indian store? So the teepee is not just a little teepee. It's like literally it's a full scale teepee. And the cool thing is, because you do have readers that come in the store, and you've created a space for readers to come in, and you have events, and the teepee is kind of the centerpiece when you have events, like the person sits at the front of it in the circle of people, whether you're doing a new moon circle or whatever, it's always that teepee is what kind of the energy of the store. And that, I don't know why it didn't dawn on me when you said, is this an Indian store? Dawn on me. But so
you were thinking from India.
Well, no, because when we did the flea market together to buy stuff for the store that you sell, we found some amazing, paint by numbers, Indian head. You found Indian headdress, the little drum. There's a lot of Indian elements in there, which that's why I'm like, I was thinking of those things. I wasn't even thinking of the most obvious thing in the store. So now, tell me, really quick, I want to go back to Serendipity for a second, because I want to talk about a little bit about how it's evolved now. You've evolved it, you've opened Muse House, and you still are kind of evolving. Serendipity's really evolved. It's gone. You don't do the gift shows anymore. That's one thing I really want to talk about, because gift shows are happening. Everybody goes, you have literally gone out of your way not to do gifts. You still work with your reps, and you still write lines, like standard lines, but you have purposely gone to go find things that are not everywhere, that we're not, because we all know as buyers, we all know there's stores up and down every street that we all buy from the same gene pool. That's what the industry is. But you have purposely gone out of your way to go and find things that people don't have. Tell me a little about your thought process of that.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Well, here's the thing is, I realized I was doing shows to go on the trips, right? So,
yes, you were. I forgot about that.
Okay, well, I think I'll do the New York show because I want to be in New York. I don't even think I really bought a lot when I was there, right? So that was kind of the other strange conundrum. And you know how I feel about Vegas. So I think I did it 2 or 3 times, and I every time said, I'm never doing this again. I am literally never doing it again. And it finally came down to, how can I not only find different vendors, but figure out ways to be more innovative in my buying, being creative. Now, I've always, when I travel, go to other shops. That is, I know comp shopping is well known, but that's always been my thing. And I
think that's smart.
I think, well, and it's because it's something I'm already going to buy, right? It's I love this, I'm going to buy this, and then I'll contact the vendor. And it's not, it's usually not in my area. It's all those types of things. So that's actually been a lot of how I do my buying. But I'll also, my biggest secret, I think, was I started doing the Tucson Gem Show to buy crystals and stones. And then I had so much fun there. And I found all these different vendors, and it wasn't just stones and it wasn't just crystals. It was, tabletop stuff, or blankets or rugs or pillows. And I just would drive out and buy there. And that kind of sustained us for a while. But it's changing again, because now we're doing so much more with food, like
the
food line,
pantry.
yes, in Serendipity, that is actually kind of an aspect where I probably need to go out and do more with that, because
That's exciting.
we have staple lines,
Yeah.
but I need to find more. That's I still feel like the not just the farmer's market feel
Yeah.
of going into a store and being able to put together like a beautiful cheese board and different foods on top of it and make it a beautiful gift. It's useful, it's practical, and it's beautiful. So it kind of touches on all the key elements.
I mean, I think honestly, like, I think the pantry development of the retailers that are doing pantry, I think that it's such a great addition to your tabletop department that most retailers may already have. But I will say this, like, if you do tabletop, that you need to do more than just like one or two items, because it's not going to make a difference. Like, that you're giving somebody three choices and that's it. And if they don't like that, then that you're out of luck. But I think that the way you're developing it, the way Masane developed it, she started with a pretty good amount of pantry from one line, and then she's now just kind of, as you have, kind of expanded it out to other lines. But make sure, if you do it, for those of you out there, is that make sure you start with a good enough amount of product where you give your customers a good selection. It's not just like, here's three items and that's it, because they won't sell if it's just the three. But I love that that is. So is holiday, are we looking at more pantry for fourth quarter for
yeah, no, it has to be because it's we had gone into, and we have gone into like doing camping, like a kind of a camping outdoorsy theme with everybody kind of going back to the land. And then we had always had cocktail, right? Those were like cocktail, pantry, camping type. So the things that I'm seeing shift big time are like the outdoorsy stuff. It's still okay, but it's not where it was last year.
Yeah, I think a lot. I think even me with the pharmacy, it's like I've kind of backed off the camping thing. Although it's still, and it's always, I think it's still good for men's, because it's like, it's hard to find men's gifts, and that kind of always filled such a great space.
I agree. I totally agree. So I think it's having maybe a couple books, and just it really needs to be slimmed down, because I'm looking at like where we had that and where we had that display. And the books sell. Books always are our biggest seller. But beyond that, it really hasn't changed much. And then cocktail is interesting, because I'm seeing a shift, and I kind of felt this a while ago. People are not giving, as at least from my space or my perspective, they're not gifting cocktail as much.
Interesting.
It's sitting there a little longer. And so I don't really know if that's just my location. But I think people are doing healthier choices.
Yeah.
Maybe. And so we have coffee. We have like the coffee element, which is made in Ventura, like this beautiful coffee that actually.
You do a lot of local. You give a lot of local love, which that I think is so smart. And also what you've done, that you've kind of curated along the same lines of not buying where everybody else is buying. You've been going to the farmer or flea markets and finding some amazing, like you found those amazing, it's Mexican pottery. And so we're cross merchandising it back with your coffees and teas, and where it becomes that add-on sales. But what I love that it has kind of shifted into is it's new found object, and then, local love. I mean, it's real. I mean, it's become such a beautiful mix that, and it's very different than everywhere else. And that, I think that's what I love about it. It's kind of, you've curated a very,
Yes.
you curated it.
Yeah. And if I love the product, honestly, I will put it in there. And that was the other thing with we brought in a bath line not too long ago. And I did the full line. She had actually solicited it to me and shared, one of the reps who lives locally. And she's like, I just have to we have to be in this store. We love this store. And she left a bunch of samples. The products were beautiful. But beyond that, I used the products. But when I went, this is always like a telltale sign. When I went to Marival for my birthday, my 40th birthday, which Marival is one of my spaces. And then I can see, oh, yep, they're carrying it too. I start to understand that when the places that I go to are carrying what I'm bringing in or what I, potentially been shown, it's almost like, yep, that's in alignment. I'm on target. It's knowing, and it's too, it's knowing the spaces you love and not copying them, but just seeing what kind of product they're carrying. Because a lot of times you're going to find, wait a second, I love being in this space. What that right there, that hand cream is my favorite. Maybe I'll try it in the store. That's how I don't know. That's how I operate. And then on top of that, I was at the inn, the Ojai Valley Inn, which is, my space. I worked there when I was a teenager.
I like to travel.
It's my space. I like to travel, but they have it too. So I was like, okay, got it. I'm on. And it was a very new line. It was a brand new line. This woman had come up with this concept, and it worked well, smelled great, and it was great, simple packaging. So it's selling like crazy.
I think that your point to going places, and because when I had my stores at Fred Siegel, I also did the gift shows because gave me a chance to go somewhere new. But I always, no matter where, like when I'd shop the Chelsea Piers or is it Chelsea, where you go underground and it's all those little stores and markets and whatnot. But I always shopped other people's stores, not only for inspiration, but also to buy, because a lot of times, like if you do the show and you see the product, you don't have a chance to really try it at home yourself. I mean, you hand cream and whatnot, but you really don't have a chance to really experience it. And what I found is going and buying random items that I loved, going and trying them at home, like I love this, and then bring it to the store. It also, same thing. It also brought stuff to the store that wasn't everything else. Because in Fred Siegel, we all were under one roof. Most of us were zip code protected. I mean, to be honest, you have to in that size of space, but we're all looking for the same items that are like the newest, the best, whatever it is. So we're all hitting the gift shows, like literally, like all of us had come into town the day before, and every single Fred Siegel buyer would all be there, and it's anxiety, like trying to shop like that, trying to find stuff before anybody else does. And it's like, okay, I love it. Please make sure you don't sell it to anybody else. It's here. It's just for us. But I found when I'm shopping and I'm finding things like that, it was both a different experience. It was more relaxing, way less anxiety driven. But I found stuff that wasn't at the show. There were smaller lines that, no one else. And that's still, I love that you shop like that, because that's still the way I prefer to shop when, we're doing buys. And I don't have competition like that anymore now that with the pharmacy, it's like, there's no one near us. So I can pretty much order, but I still believe that way of shopping is like the best. It also becomes more in alignment with who you are as a brand.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's funny enough, you telling that story, and that actually sounds so fun to all arrive the day before, and like, even though it would be stressful.
We weren't together. Let's put it that way. We weren't no, because we were all separate. Everybody's separate owners, and you were friends, but there's I think certain buyers would, like Michael Campbell from Fred Siegel, my boss, would probably show up, and Pascal and Steve, who owned Fred Siegel Couture, they'd all hang out, but it wasn't like a department store where all the buyers work for the same brand. And we're like, all like when Target comes into town, like to the shows, it's like everyone's like Target's here, or like the Nordstrom's group. It's like, and they travel in packs, like, but most buyers and under Fred Seal, you all come into town like to make sure you're on the ground ready to run like the moment the doors open, but it's most of the time you weren't like really hanging out with each other.
Okay, well, that doesn't sound quite as
Very competitive.
Yeah, it does. It sounds very, yeah, you're right, anxiety. And
That's just how I was, just because I was the youngest one out of, I think, most of the owners. So I just
yeah.
learned like you need to hit the ground running and you need to find it before everybody else finds it.
And too, I've experienced that, just even having the small, the gift shop, and then other people at shows, like make sure no one else has, I had that on the street. I actually had that on the
Because
street.
you're on Tahunga. So for those who don't know, Tahunga is in Studio City. It's one neighborhood, it's one street. It's a very small street that's like amazing restaurants and these great stores, and it's a very community, but it's a very short street. So you all, same thing, you all are buying from the same show, same people, you're all looking for the newest and the greatest. And so I think your way of doing it, I love, because it's curated a totally different selection of merchandise than you're going to see, honestly, up and down that whole street.
Yeah, and that street's changing. We're blessed to have these two kind of foundational restaurants, right? Vitello's and Aroma, and they ground that space out. They ground that street out. And without them, and I say this to everyone, without them, the street wouldn't be. I mean, we wouldn't, because those are the tools. And even though Vitello's is going through a bit of a change, and now I'm noticing that the shop, even though the shops they've been there forever, there's not a lot of changeover, right? So it's not a lot of new stuff. It's not a lot of new products. It's not a lot of new energy at all. It's kind of like, okay, this is interesting. So I'm buying with the competition that I've never really felt competitive with, right? So I've never really felt super competitive with my neighbors, thank God. But I do know that I got that a lot from other people, where they would feel really competitive and it would become a problem. Yeah.
Well, I think it's natural. I mean, I know, I don't know. For me, Fred taught me a long time ago, and I still try and tell people, I know I've told you before, like, but it's like, worry about your store and your store only. Don't worry about what everybody else is doing. Don't worry about and it's like, for those who are listening, all of you have stores on a street where you all have, but honestly, that little piece of advice from Fred, don't worry about everybody else. You worry about you and constantly be pushing your brand forward. Don't look behind you. Don't look to see whatever you keep working on your stores and make them the best as possible, and make sure they're changing and evolving and they're not staying. And I still go by that. And I still, like, even if somebody has the same thing, a couple doors down, for me, I don't worry about it, because honestly, like, it looks totally different in one store to the next. And so I've never really bought by that. I get competitive just because I want my stores to be the best, and I want my stores to look really good, and I want that's my own competition. Like when I go to your store, it's like, okay, we're gonna make this window look better than anyone else, and that's my competition.
Absolutely. But there's this altruistic part of me too that's like very much wants the success of every single person, because I do understand that, just by one store being successful, that doesn't do anything. It's like when the full, when everyone's successful,
Exactly.
it's so much more beneficial. And
they're going to shop everywhere. They're not just going to shop. It's like they will shop the whole street, and that's 100%. There's enough room at the table.
Yeah. So, I mean, and you really instilled that in me early on. And I, because I was dealing with stuff probably back in the day, right around when you first came in. And that's always been my focus. Like, it's just been my focus. I don't worry about anyone else's issues. I'm, like, with being a small community street, everybody wants to rope you into their side. We want to do this, sign this petition. And it's like, I'm super neutral. I do not want to have any part in a lot of stuff.
That's smart. So you and you had come to me and you said, you had this vision and you had been manifesting and you had been looking at all different kind of places to open a retreat center. And tell me where this thought process started, because where you were looking and where you are now are night and day. So take everybody a little bit through the process.
Well, the process was really grueling, actually, because I kept feeling like I needed to have a bigger space. It just like, I need a bigger space. I need a bigger space. And we were doing events at Muse, and the space was tight, and it's in the back of the store, and you have to move all the stuff. And it's like, I just want a bigger space. I need to have an outdoor space, and I wanted to do. I wanted people to be able to rent it out for retreats and do all of those types of things. So I don't even know how I manifested it. I just kept looking. Like, I just kept putting it out there, for whatever experience that was meant to be. And it's been a really life-altering experience on many levels, for a couple of factors that come through after I signed the lease of the space. But at the same time, I get to be here in this space. I can host events here. I can do the podcast here. We do a lot in the space, but also, hopefully I've been offering it up as a space for people to come and do retreats, because it's exactly what I not envisioned, because I don't want to say it's exactly what I envisioned, because I envision, me, a beautiful Spanish 1920s villa, right? Like, that is
because you were looking originally, you had started looking at some historical buildings and then realizing that,
oh my gosh, yes, in not Georgia, in Ohio.
Yeah. So you had looked at that, and then I was like, when you brought to me, I was like, that is because if you buy a historical or you rent a historical building or whatnot, you have to keep the integrity of the building. And there are grants and whatnot that you can get when you are going to take over a historical building. But by far and large, you are dumping a shit ton of money into something to keep the integrity of the building. And you were looking at it for hosting. I'm so sorry. I have like two auditory things going on right now. My housekeeper's here with the vacuum, and my dog is obviously being taunted by a squirrel. So I apologize for whatever everyone's hearing in the background. But when because you were thinking of, like, you wanted events there, you wanted, is a retreat center, a true retreat center where.
Yeah. And but Michelle, you could give me a space, and then when I look at the space, I literally can envision what we could do there, right? So it was, that space in Ohio would have been amazing, even though, yes, the financial aspect of it was a huge endeavor, and I didn't have the funds to do so at that time. And so that one, I was like, we could build a marketplace, and the people can come shop the marketplace, and could have as like on-site farmers market. And there was just so much. It's almost like when I see a space, I start to understand, like, I start to see all the things that it can do, right?
Well, your vision is so expansive, I guess is a good word.
It's expansive, but all I can say is, when somebody has a vision or has a dream, keep open to flexibility, because things are literally not going to always come in the way you think they're going to come in. We as humans want to have all the control in the world, but it literally makes you realize you have no control at all, right? So this space came up, and my agent was like, you have to see the Lobo Canyon. Do you know all about Lobo Canyon? I was like, no, I don't I don't really know, I like Ojai. I'm from Ojai. I like to be up there. I was looking at Malibu. And there was all sorts of funny things with restrictions and what's going on with my ex-husband. And so it was just like, oh, this is getting complicated. And so when I saw this house,
and it's just for everyone to understand, like the house that you are sitting in right now is the house that you're speaking of.
Yes, this is Casa. When I saw this house and I walked in, I knew it's like you have to walk into the space, right? I knew it had the proper airflow. Like it had that space where you walk in and you're like, ooh, it has to have, for me, it has to have that transported feel. You have to feel like you're transported into a different reality, and then that reality then becomes your reality of that moment, right? So this one really did, and it was like, okay, I think I'm gonna do this one. There was emails back and forth to my astrologer about what the hell I was doing and the timing and all the things, and it really was, if I'm gonna do this, I have to do it now. There was a push that I couldn't explain. It was a push that almost was like, you have to do this now. And I had that with the retreats with Muse House, the original. I had this push. And so I just followed it. And I kind of went with the idea of, always that field of dreams idea of, if you build it, they will come. The challenges we've been facing are more with, this is now, I'm coming off of Tahanga. I'm coming out of Studio City, where my community is, and I'm coming to Agora Hills, where I don't know anyone, right? And so this is like, oh my goodness, I now have to start to build other community and have to network here and network where people are going to drive here. It's going to be more than just Studio City.
So tell everyone what the plan is. I'm going to have you turn the camera around in a second, but tell everybody what you have been doing, because you've already had a few events, which I wish I could come to. But tell everybody a little bit about how the space is working right now.
So the space is set up, to do events. We've had a few events where they're mostly sound bath events, because the home itself is really amazing with sound. And they were amazing. But it really gave me the experience of how much work it is too. When you're hosting events and you're doing 2 stores and you have kids and things like that, it's almost like, okay, it really started to make me understand, I need a stronger support team, right? I need a stronger support team, and then we also need more marketing and media and all of those things. So the events were amazing. But right now is basically, I'm here currently until the end of July, and then July I will be moved out, because my son is going to camp up the street with the horses and everything. So for our summertime, I gave myself this time to be here, and then take him to camp right up the road. But if somebody wanted to rent it out, it's completely available. We have another space to go to. It's not a problem.
And it's what I love is like, for people who want to hold, say, a management meeting with your team and it's a weekend retreat, there are 4 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms?
5 bedrooms.
5 bedrooms, a massive kitchen, a pool, like it's the perfect retreat space for, especially, for corporate events. I think it would be amazing, but also for if you're holding a wellness retreat and to have, the healers come in and do their thing, and, somebody else comes in and does cooking, and, it is like the perfect space for that. So I'm going to have you.
Yes, it really is. And it's almost like if a company wanted to do a wellness retreat for their staff, like that,
because you can connect them also with healers that you work with. Like if you want to do, like, everyone comes and you have an astrology night or you have a sound bath night, like you could help connect people with these people so they can help do these amazing events with some of the people that you have in your pocket.
Yes, exactly. I do. We do. We have a huge directory now. It's like it's grown. So yeah, we could host. I mean, it really is versatile. But do you want me to turn it around?
Yeah, turn around first so you can show the kitchen, because I'm
Okay.
obsessed with the kitchen. So giant sofa that, that's where the sound bath, but the kitchen is massive.
Yes, and you can see my breakfast right there, so I apologize. But yes, it's a gourmet kitchen. So it's quite amazing. I mean, it really has been
and then
been
turn
wonderful.
around, there's the view into the living room, which the sound baths are usually in there. And then now you have to take them outside, because I'm obsessed with the outside.
Oh yes, we'll go outside.
And all the rooms have been decorated beautifully. They're super calming. They're exactly what you would want on a retreat.
Painstakingly so. I did a ton with the furnishing. And
look at that, people. And
so,
listen
yeah,
to the birds, and
it's the views. I mean, you really do get a different sense when you're here. It immediately calms your nervous system.
it's just I miss, because for a time I lived on Fred Siegel's property off Canaan, and there's something about living out in that area or with the hills around you and whatnot.
Yeah, it's the mountains are amazing. Do you want me to go upstairs?
Yeah, go upstairs.
So, and then this is the front entry, which the door, I mean, so you pretty much have views everywhere. I was just thinking, I don't have a lot of artwork, but I don't really need it.
I think that if you're having a retreat space, though, you want it less personalized, like with artwork and stuff like that. I think what you've done and kept it clean, and it really becomes about, really honestly, the environment.
Yeah, it's meant to connect you. And so this is our upstairs. This is our little media room, which I call the media room, because this is where the kids spend the most time. The dining table, and then
there's another little mini kitchen up there. So if you're having an event, you have two things going on. There's a little mini.
We're watering plants. Watering plants. This one's getting set up still, but it's still.
That mirror looks great. I haven't seen the mirror.
It's great. It's kind of the office space, and then we have the two.
I mean, look at that. It's like so yum. Just the tones of everything, of the decor, it's just so calming.
Yeah, it's meant. Yeah, I like this room. It's still one of my favorites.
So now that you're upstairs, I'm gonna have you sit back down with your laptop.
Okay.
And you started another project, which I'm very excited about.
I did? Which one?
You started the podcast.
Oh, I did.
Tell everybody about your podcast. So I'm so excited that you're doing this, because it's you are one of those people. I mean, you are my friend and you're my client. You're mostly my friend. You are one of those people that exudes this energy and this aura about you that's very calming, and that's just you. That's who you are, that I love. And now that you've started this podcast, now you're putting your voice out there like I am. And I think it gives people really a chance to know you and what makes you you, and talking about what you're passionate about. So tell everybody a little bit about that.
The podcast is, it was meant to start to help people understand, how are we as spiritual beings and living this spiritual life and doing meditation and all these things, how are we bringing it into the actual day to day? I think what for me, I have so many outside factors that are stressful, whether it's the children or the businesses or, an ex or all the things. I have all those things going on in my life. But I don't even try. I just don't want them to be the only thing I'm experiencing. Right. Yeah. And that's because it's really a lot. So,
which I think a lot of people, I mean, like that's life,
right? That's life. And I always am so interested in connecting with other people who are maybe doing it a little differently, or they found something that's really helping them manage certain elements of their lives, whether it's the children or the businesses. And then how are they bringing a spiritual practice into that, and how are we kind of living these lives that are spiritually based, but that are not, I don't know, they're not floating out in the world in a different realm. How are we grounding it out into this reality and really bringing it into this reality? And so I just have loved talking to so many people in the community, but also starting to talk to different authors and people who I've actually carried their books. So
That's great.
Yeah, I've carried these people's books, a bunch of people coming on next month, several book authors, and then one of our moon deck, which is this beautiful moon deck. Oh my gosh. So she's coming on.
And you had Ellen, who we had Ellen as well.
We had Ellen from United Other. That podcast we've already done. That one's going to be released. And then also a woman coming on talking about conscious, she does a lot with conscious dating and conscious relationships. So yeah. So in this world, it's like, how are we doing things differently? So we're not constantly repeating our patterns.
When does it come out? Do you have a regular schedule?
We are coming down with a regular schedule, because what we did is we launched it, and then we launched it with 6 episodes. And then
are you launching all 6 episodes at the same time? Or are you
Brittany, I think launched them all at the same time. I don't know. I don't know really if we had a really set schedule with that. We just launched it all. We just put everything we had out there. Actually, we had 2 more. We had 8. So those 2 more will come out in July. Okay. And then I have 8 more scheduled to record for next month.
And the name of it, and where can people listen to? Do you have a website for it?
We don't.
How, Brittany, get a web. Pod Page is who hosts our website, because if people, we have it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, like everywhere you can listen to a podcast. But in case, there's a lot of newbies who aren't podcast listeners. So it's easy to say, just go to, for us, the retailhorrorpodcast.com, and you can pick any of the episodes from there. It it plays as basically an archive, for those who don't listen to podcasts, because there's a lot of people that don't listen to podcasts that will hear about it and go, oh, I want to listen. Where do I hear it?
Right.
Start to explain, go to Apple. I mean, it's like, for some people, it's too much. It's a lot easier to direct them to a website.
Well, my mom, actually. So yes, I had to.
My mom doesn't even know. I think she knows I have one. My mom has no idea how to get it. So.
I heard the clip. I think it was only 2 minutes long. I said, you mean on our Instagram? You heard the clip? You thought I dealt with that. So that's a good note. It's called Becoming Muse. But, and also the idea too of like, we are our own sovereign beings, and we are our own muses. And so when we start to understand that, the community around us can have other perspectives and other tools and all those things, but we really do have all the power within ourselves to shift our realities and shift our lives. So I just hope to give that.
So I'm going to ask you 2 final questions that I ask everybody, is because you have a million things going, you've like 18 plates spinning at the same time, and because you also are a mom, where do you find inspiration, and how do you find balance to everything that you're doing?
Mm-hmm. Inspiration comes primarily, and this is maybe specifically for me, but from traveling. Like I go back home, what I call home, and home is Ojai to me. And so when I'm there, I actually get the most inspiration that will last me for a good amount. Like when I know I need to rebalance or recalibrate, that's where I go. So I think it's just knowing where you go, where you feel that way, and then going back there, because that's my inspiration spot.
And balance. Does that also include balance as well?
Totally balances me out. Yes, it totally balances me out because it's, I don't know if it's, I don't even know if that is just the frequency. It's just that there's so much for me to, I don't know if it's just I know the space so well and I'm able to really like ground out and disconnect from the world around me in LA, and everything going on. But it's I feel more balanced when I'm there. But also, how am I balancing like my day-to-day life? I always have time set. I don't even plan it, but as long as I have a few minutes set aside where I'm either, now it's like I can be out by the pool, where it's just quiet downtime, or going to get a massage, or anything that's kind of like luxury based. I'm like, yeah, and without big items. But yeah, like spas and massages and getting my hair done, those types of things, I find like it does rebalance me, recalibrates me.
And then my last question is, any advice to somebody who's just starting out on a spiritual path?
Oh, advice. Find community. Just find community. Finding other people who are on the same path, or not even same path, just like on the same journey, if you will. It's so much more supportive when you have community and a tribe, and it doesn't even have to be good friends. It could literally just be a space that you continue to go back to because there are people you can share with, and there are people who can guide you. There's something about guidance and mentorship and having that really does help, because you can feel lost very easily when that starts to happen. So knowing who to talk to and having guides.
That is perfect. Thank you so much for your time, my friend. I'm so honored that you came on and told your story and shared Casa. I'm so excited for this to come out. And we'll make sure we link Casa and the podcast and everything so people can follow you. And there you go. But thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you guys for sharing the space with me. And yeah, it was my pleasure. Obviously.
Love you, Mama.